I hope that you are having a beautiful day and that life is ebbing and flowing your way with ease and abundance. On today's show, we are going to have a little chat about death. Now, I know some of you might be saying, Mary, death is such a morbid subject. How are you going to catalyze my joy with a subject like death? And to you, my friend, I say, give me a few minutes and I'm going to break it all down for you in a way that I hope will give you some hope or clarity around an area that a lot of people associate with pain and suffering and the unknown. I'm also going to share a few stories with you, and then I'm going to share with you what I know now about death that I wished I knew before I had to deal with the aftermath of it. And I will also share my own near death experience that has helped me drive out some of my own beliefs about death. And lastly, I'm going to share a prayer with you to wish anyone that you're losing or have lost a beautiful passage into the great beyond and hope that it brings you and your loved one some comfort. Welcome to the Mary Dee Show. I'm your host, Mary Dee, here to be your guide as we extract wisdom and life lessons from top CEOs, thought leaders, artists, spiritual luminaries, and wellness experts. My intention is to bring you value in every show that sparks an idea, helps you break a limiting belief, or encourages you to create thoughts that uplevel your life so that you can know from the deepest parts of your soul that everything you want is available to you and that abundance is your birthright. In 2018, I healed from breast cancer holistically after surgery without the use of chemotherapy or pharmaceuticals. I love biohacking and plant medicine and exploring spirituality and what it means to be in relationship with spirit so that we can feel whole and complete no matter what life throws at us. My specialty in the business world is strategy and leadership, and my gift to each of you is my ability to listen so that I can help others see themselves. In each episode, I want to sprinkle you with some hope dust, tickle your funny bone, and inspire you to find your inner roar. Get ready to live your most aligned, purposeful, and joy-filled life now, and enjoy the show. I love my mom so much, and it's hard to look at her and see some of the physical pain she's having to go through as her body changes and matures. We're going to celebrate her 79th birthday soon, and I'm reminded that each moment I get with her is special. And one day, when her physical body isn't here, I know that I will still remember how she makes me feel. And at the end of the day, that's what we're remembered by, how we make people feel. Back in April, I was visiting my parents, and my dad was going to have knee surgery. He had one before on his left leg, and this time they were going in to do the right. He asked me to be available, so of course I was. We took him to pre-op. Everything looks good. And then Friday comes along. We have him in surgery by 10 a.m. while my mom and I sit and wait. We've done this once before, so pretty much everything went just like it did the time before. Except this time my dad was experiencing a little more post-surgery pain in his leg. After a few hours, was up and walking on his new knee, which is great. I got them settled into his room for the night, and then I went home to decompress and wait for the call in the morning for my dad's discharge. It had already been a long day, and I was home decompressing in the bath, and my phone rings. And it's already past 11 o'clock at night, and I'm surprised that my phone is ringing. And as I go to pick it up, I realize that my mom is on the other line, and she's telling me that they have to take my dad to the ICU over to another hospital, and she's not allowed to ride in the ambulance. I am slightly confused because I don't know why my dad suddenly needs to go to the ICU. And then a nurse pops on the line to tell me that my dad has had a condition that they call a heart block, and his beats per minute dropped down to 20 beats per minute, and that almost sent him into cardiac arrest. They don't know why it happened, but they know they are not equipped at that hospital to handle an emergency of that magnitude if it happens again. So I get dressed and head to the hospital to collect my mom. We wait until the ambulance arrives, and we follow behind the ambulance a block over to the main hospital. My dad gets checked in. A couple hours later, he is in his room at the ICU, and we are ready to call it a day. The nurse assures us we'll get an update once the cardiologist can see my dad. We give goodbye kisses, and my mom and I go home. For the entire next week, we go to the hospital a couple times a day to visit my dad. We are constantly calling for an update or meeting with a doctor or nurse to find out how he did that day. We're also still trying to manage his physical therapy because he needs to be walking on his new knee. And if you saw my dad that week, you would not have thought that he needed to be in the hospital. He really seemed fine, and his vitals were good every day, along with a sense of humor. He was doing what he pretty much would be doing at home, which is watching TV and waiting for the next meal. Alone with my mom at home, we were having a really reflective experience. And what came up is the question of what would my mom do if my dad didn't make it? And my mom looked at me square in the eyes and she said, "I go with you. I can't stay here by myself." And I realized that we all hadn't really talked about it. After all, when do you start talking about death or the plans that need to be made when death is knocking on the door? It is a higher potential because maybe someone's older or sicker. And we had the basic things in order when you're talking about last requests and wills and trusts and things like that. But we hadn't actually talked about the care of one parent in the absence of the other. And I immediately reached out to my sister, and we decided that her and I needed to have a bigger conversation with each other about my mom's care if she were the last one standing. And in our family culture, it typically would fall on the eldest child to take care of parents in their old age. However, my sister actually lives in Thailand, and I'm usually traveling. So we had to go back and forth and talk about a few scenarios where maybe we both take some responsibility for my mom's care and split the load. We both also decided that this wasn't going to be a solution we were going to be able to come to on the spot, but it was going to be a discussion we continue to have as time goes on and as things play out. One thing is for certain, if you haven't done the basics, like writing out your last wishes or how you want your affairs to be handled, now is actually the best time. The best time is when you are well, when your mind is in a good place, and when you have the opportunity to tell the people who support you what your desires are. Too often we think we have more time and then someone passes and we have no idea what they would want. And in coping with our own grief, we now have the added weight of making hard decisions, trying to honor their life, but not really knowing what it was they wanted. So whether that's you, your partner, or the parental figures in your life, I really encourage you to have the conversation so that there's no confusion or doubt over what's desired. I also remember when my grandmother was ailing, and a couple years before her death, every time the ambulance would show up, she would start taking off her jewelry and basically throwing it at us because she was sure that the paramedics and hospital staff were going to take the jewelry off her body if she left the house with it on. And the day of her funeral, my uncle, deep in his own grief, pulls out a pair of her earrings from his pocket and says to me, "Do you think she wants to wear these earrings?" And in response, I just said, "I don't know if she has much of an opinion about those right now." My grandma wasn't really specific about her outfit for the day of her service. She kind of left it all to us, and we did the best we could. My grandma was just a few months short of 87 when she passed away, and in my eyes, she lived such a full and beautiful life. She deserved to be put to rest and any suffering that her physical body was experiencing. And I remember really celebrating her that day, laughing and sharing stories and inviting others to do the same. My uncle, on the other hand, was really devastated. My grandfather had already passed away, and now he was going to be living alone with no one to care for. And I think for him, maybe feeling like no one was available to care for him either. I'm reminded that we all have a mode of grief that is very dictated by our emotions that we carry for the other person and ourselves and how we're experiencing their physical absence. Where do we go to get support when we feel like our heart has been blasted wide open and that a piece of it is missing? Definitely the support of our closest friends and family. But if you don't have that support, or if you need more, then where do you go? And this led me down a few paths, but one of them I found was a nonprofit called lovenotlost.org. This is run by a young lady named Ashley Jones, who also has a really solid TEDx talk you can find on YouTube called How to Heal in Grief. Again, it's called How We Heal in Grief. If any of you are experiencing grief over the loss of a loved one, preparing for that loss, or honestly, any grief of loss in general, this is such a good TED Talk that can bring some healing to your life. In the cancer community, we have conversations about grief because although not everyone will lose their life, there is still a significant loss that does feel like a part of our past has died. A part of our identity has died, and we're never going to get it back. My breasts were amputated and reconstructed, and they'll never quite look or feel like they did for the first 40 years of my life. There is a mourning and a grief that happens when you lose parts of your body because many times those things are part of our identity, and it can feel really disempowering when they're gone. Thank you for joining us on today's show. I hope that today's session inspires you to live an aligned life where you get to take complete ownership of your feelings and decisions to live in your truth. You can connect with me more at www.maryd.com. You can also catch us on YouTube at The Mary Dee Show. Head on over to Instagram and Facebook and type in at The Mary Dee and just look for the little blue check to ensure you're on my official page.